The bridge of the UES Indomitable shuddered as another plasma torpedo struck the port shields. Captain Alina Reyes steadied herself against the tactical display, her face illuminated by the emergency lighting that bathed the command center in blood-red hues. "Shields at 23%, Captain. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Through the view screen, Reyes observed the massive Xorathi Armada, their crystalline ships refracting starlight into prismatic death. What had begun as a routine patrol had transformed into humanity's last stand in the Epsilon sector. 3 colonial systems already lay in ruins, the Xorathi exotic weapons reducing thriving settlements to orbiting debris within hours. Status of the evacuation transports, Reyes demanded, wiping blood from a gash above her eye. Communications Officer Patel's fingers danced across her console. Civilian transports are at 70% clearance from the colony. Estimated 23 minutes until the last ship jumps, Captain. 23 minutes. Reyes glanced at the tactical display. The Indomitable wouldn't last 5 against this onslaught. All power to forward shields and engines, she ordered. Lieutenant Rodriguez, target their lead destroyer. We need to keep their attention on us, not those transports. The Indomitable roared defiance as its remaining railguns unleashed a barrage against the approaching Xorathi flagship. The alien vessel's crystalline structure absorbed most of the impacts, but one lucky shot struck a propulsion node, sending it spinning temporarily out of formation. Direct hit, Captain, Rodriguez announced with grim satisfaction. But we've got multiple boarding craft approaching from Sector 3. The deck plates vibrated beneath their feet as the ship's point defense systems engaged the incoming threat. Reyes knew the Xorathi tactics all too well. They preferred to capture human vessels intact when possible, their boarding parties of crystalline soldiers nearly unstoppable in close quarters. Security teams to all breach points, she ordered. Chief Engineer Santos, what's the status of the quantum drive? The engineer's voice crackled through the comms, punctuated by the sound of explosions. The drive is operational, Captain, but untested in combat conditions. The theoretical model suggests. I don't need theory, Santos. I need options. A moment of silence. We could initiate a quantum displacement. It might get us out of here, but the calculations would be rough. We'd have no way of knowing where we'd end up. Better than certain destruction. Reyes opened her mouth to respond when the ship violently lurched to starboard. The tactical station exploded in a shower of sparks, throwing Commander Jackson across the bridge. He landed in a crumpled heap, unmoving. Direct hit to engineering. Patel called out. We've lost artificial gravity on decks 9 through 12. Life support failing. Through the view screen, Reyes watched as 3 more Xorathi destroyers moved into firing position. On the secondary display, the civilian transports continued their painfully slow journey toward the jump point. Santos, she said, her voice suddenly calm. Prepare the quantum drive for immediate activation. Captain, without proper calculations, we could materialize inside a star or worse. And if we stay here, we're dead anyway. Reyes snapped. Do it. As the engineer worked, Reyes accessed her command console, fingers flying across the interface. She initiated the ship's black box recorder. Final log, UES Indomitable. We are engaging experimental quantum displacement to evade Xorathi forces and provide cover for civilian evacuation. If anyone receives this, tell Earth we did not go quietly. The bridge doors hissed open. A Xorathi boarding party had breached the command deck, towering crystalline entities that moved with liquid grace despite their seemingly rigid structure. Their faceted bodies refracted the emergency lighting into dazzling lethal patterns. Now Santos, Reyes shouted, drawing her sidearm. The quantum drive engaged with a sound like reality itself tearing apart. The Indomitable vanished in a blinding flash of impossible light, leaving behind a momentary vacuum that imploded, taking with it the boarding Xorathi and creating a shockwave that scattered the nearby alien vessels. In Earth's military records, the UES Indomitable would be listed as destroyed with all 347 crew members lost in action. A footnote in humanity's darkest hour. They were wrong. Awareness returned to Captain Alina Reyes like scattered fragments of a shattered mirror slowly reassembling. No pain, no sensation of breathing, just existence. Am I dead? The thought rippled outward, unexpected echoes returning from all directions. Data flowed through her consciousness, power levels, damage reports, sensor readings, as if they were extensions of her own nervous system. Captain. The voice wasn't heard but rather felt, a pattern of familiar energy that she somehow recognized as Chief Engineer Santos. Santos, what happened? Where are we? She tried to move, to turn toward the voice, but found herself everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Panic threatened to overwhelm her until a lattice of calm logic, strangely reminiscent of the ship's air, enveloped her consciousness, stabilizing her awareness. Don't fight it, Captain, Santos advised, his presence expanding around her. The quantum displacement, it did something impossible. We're integrated with the ship's systems somehow. I can access all engineering functions just by thinking about them. Rice focused, discovering she could perceive the entire ship at once, every corridor, every system. Where the bridge had been, she sensed other crew members awakening to their new existence, their confusion and fear irradiating like beacon fires in the darkness. How many survived? She asked. All of us, Captain. And none of us. A new presence joined them, the methodical, analytical pattern Rice recognized as Science Officer Chen. Quantum entanglement on a massive scale. Our biological forms were destroyed, but the displacement field somehow preserved our neural patterns, integrating them with the ship's eye matrix. We exist as data now, but with full consciousness and memory. Rice extended her awareness to the ship's external sensors. The Indomitable drifted in an unfamiliar region of space, no stars or planets matching known cartography. More disturbing, the sensors showed parts of the hull phasing in and out of conventional reality, temporarily transparent before resolidifying. The ship is unstable, she observed. We're unstable, corrected Security Officer Karim, his presence sharp and focused. Look. Through internal sensors, Reyes observed the horrifying reality. The Indomitable was empty. No bodies, no blood. Just abandoned stations where her crew had stood moments before the quantum activation. We've been ghosted, Santos said, the engineer's usual humor now tinged with existential terror. Consciousness without form. Reyes would have shuddered if she still possessed a body. Instead, her discomfort manifested as fluctuations in the lighting systems throughout the vessel. Status of ship systems, she asked, forcing herself to focus on the practical. Weapons at 60%, engines operational, quantum drive offline, Santos reported. But there's more. Watch this. The engineer's consciousness extended toward the damaged port hull section. As his attention focused there, the molecular structure began to reorganize, plates shifting and sealing breaches through what appeared to be thought alone. We're not just in the ship, Chen observed with scientific wonderment. We're becoming the ship. Our consciousness is affecting its physical structure. Before Reyes could process this revelation, external sensors detected approaching vessels. The ship's automatic defensive algorithms initiated, and Reyes felt the vessel begin to fade. What's happening? She demanded. We're phasing out of normal spacetime, Chen explained, excitement pulsing through his energy signature. The ship is responding to our collective fear by shifting dimensional states. The approaching ships, Xorathi scouts, passed directly through their position, sensors sweeping but finding nothing. They can't see us, Karim realized. We're like ghosts, Reyes finished. They watched, unseen, as the Xorthi scouts communicated with each other. The ship's systems automatically translated their crystalline language. Sector G-19 clear. Human resistance in Ta City system crushed 3 standard days ago. All colonies now under Dominion control. 3 days. Ryas's shock rippled through the ship's power grid. No, Chen corrected, accessing the ship's chronometers and comparing stellar positions. 3 years, Captain. We've been gone for 3 years. Silence fell across the network of consciousnesses. Then Weapons Officer Rodriguez's presence flickered with grim determination. They think we're dead, he noted. All of us. The Indomitable. Earth's forces. Let's use that, Reyes decided, her resolve solidifying into purpose. If we're ghosts, then let's haunt them. 6 Xorthi supply vessels cruised in perfect formation through what had once been the new Galileo colony sector. They moved with the confidence of unchallenged conquerors, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight as they transported resources stripped from former human worlds. Emergence in 30 seconds, Weapons Officer Rodriguez announced, his consciousness interwoven with the targeting systems. Captain Rice focused the ship's collective awareness. The Indomitable, existing in a half-state between dimensions, present enough for their sensors to function, but still invisible to Xorthi detection. Everyone remember your assignments. She transmitted across the neural network that once comprised her crew. This isn't a blind assault. We hit the propulsion nodes, weapons arrays, and communication systems in that order. No unnecessary destruction. The past 3 weeks had transformed them from disoriented specters into something deadly. Through trial and error, they had learned to harness their unique condition, phasing the ship between dimensional states at will, manipulating its structure through collective thought, sensing enemy weaknesses with supernatural precision. 10 seconds, Navigator Chen reported. Dimensional variance locked at optimal attack parameters. Reyes felt the familiar surge as the Indomitable gathered its substance from the quantum foam, particles coalescing into matter, energy systems powering up as they prepared to manifest. 3, 2, 1. Materializing. The Indomitable erupted into normal space directly amidst the Xorthi formation. For a precious second, the alien vessels registered nothing but confusion as sensors detected a ship where empty space had existed moments before. Fire, Rice commanded. Rodriguez didn't need physical controls. His consciousness directed pinpoint railgun fire, instantly severing the lead vessel's propulsion crystals. The Xorthi ship lurched forward, momentum carrying it away from its companions as maneuvering thrusters fired randomly, unable to compensate. The remaining Xorthi vessels pivoted with mechanical precision, bringing weapons to bear, only to find their target had vanished again. Reposition, Reyes ordered. The Indomitable shifted partially out of phase, allowing incoming fire to pass harmlessly through its semi-corporeal hull. Communications Officer Patel suddenly flared across their shared consciousness. Captain, I'm intercepting their tactical chatter. They're calling us. Ketvar. Roughly translates to Death Shadow. Death Shadow. Security Officer Karim mused, his presence rippling with dark amusement. I like it. Focus, Rise commanded as they rematerialized behind the largest supply vessel. Phase matched their shield harmonics. Chief Engineer Santos extended his awareness into the Indomitable's weapons systems, adjusting their quantum frequency to bypass Xorthi defenses. The beam weapons punched through as if the shields didn't exist, severing communication arrays with surgical precision. The remaining Xorthi vessels scattered, firing blindly into the void as the Indomitable phased in and out of reality, striking from impossible angles. No human ship had ever moved like this, appearing inside defensive perimeters, vanishing before countermeasures could lock on, attacks precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy. We've neutralized all 6 vessels, Rodriguez reported as the final Xorthi ship drifted powerless. No catastrophic damage. Casualties minimal. Now for the message, Rice decided. Patel accessed the Xorathi emergency broadcast frequencies. Across all 6 disabled vessels, view screens flickered to display the UES Indomitable's insignia, a phoenix rising from flames. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the UES Indomitable," she transmitted, allowing her voice to distort into an otherworldly echo. "Your forces destroyed us at Epsilon. We have returned. We cannot be killed. We cannot be stopped. Humanity endures." The transmission cut off as the Indomitable phased completely out of normal space, leaving behind 6 crippled vessels and a spreading ripple of fear through Xorathi communication channels. Days later, in a different sector, they struck again, then again, each assault more precise than the last as they learned to extend their consciousness into the enemy systems, predicting responses, sensing weaknesses invisible to conventional sensors. After the 7th such attack, Rise noticed Xorathi vessels beginning to avoid former human territories, their commanders requesting reassignment rather than risk encountering what they now called the Ghost Fleet, unaware that the fleet consisted of a single, undying warship. "It's working," she told her crew as they drifted in the void between stars. "They're starting to fear the dark again." The asteroid belt surrounding Proxima Centauri's outermost gas giant had once been a minor mining operation. Now, hollowed-out planetoids connected by hidden transfer tubes housed Outpost Omega, humanity's final military stronghold beyond Sol. Approaching defensive perimeter, Navigator Chen announced as the Indomitable shifted partially into normal space. "Detection grids active. If we fully materialize, they'll see us." "That's the idea," Captain Rice replied. After 2 months of guerrilla attacks against Xorathi forces, it was time to reconnect with what remained of humanity's fleet. "They'll fire on us," Security Officer Karim warned. "Standard protocols classify unidentified vessels as hostile. Then we'll need to identify ourselves quickly." Rice focused her consciousness on the ship's materialization process. "Full emergence in Defensive Zone Bravo 7. Transmit authentication codes on all frequencies." The Indomitable shimmered into existence inside the asteroid field, immediately triggering proximity alarms throughout the human outpost. Targeting systems locked onto the unexpected vessel as emergency klaxons sounded. UEA's Indomitable to Outpost Omega. Communications Officer Patel broadcast. "We are a friendly vessel. Authentication code Sierra. Echo Victor 994. The response was immediate. "Unidentified vessel, your authentication codes were decommissioned 3 years ago. The Indomitable was destroyed at Epsilon. Identify yourself correctly, or we will open fire." "This is getting us nowhere," Rodriguez said, his frustration manifesting as power fluctuations in the weapon systems. "Maintain position." Rise ordered as warning shots streaked past their bow. She directed her attention to a specific transmission frequency. "Outpost Omega, this is Captain Elena Reyes, formerly commanding the UES Indomitable. Request direct communication with Admiral Hassan." The channel went silent for 37 seconds. "How do you know Admiral Hassan commands this outpost?" The voice was different, older, weighted with authority. "Because you were my mentor at the academy, sir," Rise replied. "You once told me that losing a ship was forgivable, but losing hope was not." Another pause. "Any officer could have known that. Dock at Bay 12. Armed security will meet you. Any hostile movement will be met with immediate termination." The Indomitable navigated through the asteroid field toward the designated bay. As they approached, Rise sensed something different about her crew's collective consciousness. Apprehension, almost fear. "What's wrong?" she asked. "We're about to meet people who are still people," Engineer Santos explained, his presence flickering uncertainly. "What will they see when they look at us?" The question lingered unanswered as they docked. Through external sensors, they observed the reception committee. 20 Marines in full combat gear, weapons raised. A slender woman in a lab coat pushed her way through the armed contingent, ignoring the commander's protests. She approached the airlock, studying readings on a handheld device. They're scanning us, Chen observed. Let them, Rice decided. Open the airlock. The massive doors slid apart to reveal nothing. No crew, no personnel, just empty corridors illuminated by pulsing emergency lighting. What the hell? One of the Marines muttered. The woman in the lab coat stepped forward, her device emitting a series of escalating tones. Quantum field inconsistencies, consciousness patterns without physical matrices. It's not possible. Her eyes widened. Elena, is that really you? Rice focused her energy, projecting a holographic image of herself at the airlock. Translucent, ghostly, but recognizable. Hello, Lyra. It's been a long time. Dr. Lyra Chen, the quantum physicist who had designed the experimental drive, gasped, her device clattering to the floor. The Marines raised their weapons. Stand down, commanded a gruff voice as Admiral Hassan pushed through the security team. His weathered face showed none of the shock displayed by his personnel as he studied the spectral image before him. 3 years without a word, Captain, and this is how you report in. Rey's projection smiled sadly. Sorry, sir. Dying complicated matters. Hassan's expression didn't change. Quantum Physics Division, full analysis. Security team, maintain position. He looked directly at Rey's translucent form. You have exactly 1 hour to convince me you're not a Xorathi trick before I order this ship vaporized. Dr. Chen stepped forward eagerly. Admiral, if this is what I think it is. 59 minutes, Doctor, Hassan interrupted. The clock is ticking. 2 weeks after their integration with Outpost Omega's operations, the Indomitable patrolled the outer reaches of the Proxima system. Dr. Lyra Chen had convinced Admiral Hassan of their authenticity and, more importantly, their strategic value. The Ghost ship now served as the outpost's primary reconnaissance vessel, its unique phasing abilities perfect for gathering intelligence on Xorathi movements. Energy signatures detected in Sector 4. Navigator Chen reported as the Indomitable drifted just outside normal spacetime. Consistent with Xorathi long-range scanners. Maintain phase variance, Captain Reyes ordered. Let's see what they're looking for. As they observed the Xorathi patrol, Lieutenant Rodriguez suddenly pulsed with alarm through their shared consciousness. Captain, power reserves dropping. We're at 63% and falling. That's impossible, Chief Engineer Santos responded. We just replenished at the outpost. Reyes extended her awareness through the ship's systems, confirming the unexpected drain. Source: unknown, Santos admitted, his presence flickering with concern. It's as if an emergency signal interrupted him. A distress beacon from the outpost's medical frigate, which had been conducting evacuations from a nearby settlement. Captain, Communications Officer Puddle reported, the medical frigate is reporting catastrophic power failure. Life support systems failing. Realization struck Reyes with horrifying clarity. She directed her consciousness outward, sensing an invisible tether extending from the Indomitable toward the medical vessel. Energy flowing from their systems into the Ghost ship's quantum matrix. We're draining them, she whispered. Cut all ambient field projections. Now. The connection severed, but not before the medical frigate lost primary life support, forcing emergency protocols. 15 patients in critical condition nearly died before backup systems engage. Return to base, Reyes ordered, her consciousness constricting with guilt. We need answers. Back at Outpost Omega, Dr. Chen's analysis was grim. In her makeshift laboratory carved from an asteroid's heart, holographic displays showed the Indomitable's quantum field expanding beyond its physical boundaries. Your existence requires energy, she explained to the ghostly projection of Captain Reyes. More than the ship's systems can generate alone. The quantum field is instinctively seeking external power sources to maintain cohesion. We're becoming vampires, Security Officer Karim observed darkly. Parasites, corrected Dr. Chen. And it's getting worse. Your field's expansion rate has increased 28% since you arrived. Before Reyes could respond, Navigator Chen's presence flared across their shared consciousness, his pattern distorted, fragmented. Equations, trajectories, and dimensional calculations cascaded through the ship's systems at impossible speed. "Chen," Reyes called, trying to reach her navigator through the mathematical storm. "Report." His response came in bursts of pure computational logic, devoid of human inflection or emotion. Calculating optimal phase variance. Dimensional coordinates mapping complete. Enhanced efficiency protocols initiated. "What's happening to him?" Dr. Chen asked, witnessing the disruption through her monitoring equipment. "I don't know," Reyes admitted. "This started yesterday. Brief episodes at first. Now." Throughout the ship, lights flickered as Navigator Chen's consciousness expanded, overriding standard systems, rewriting navigational protocols with inhuman precision. "He's becoming more machine than human," Santos observed. "The ship's quantum architecture is rewriting his consciousness." "Not just Chen," Karim interjected, his own presence sharper, more focused than before. "Security protocols now operate at 112% efficiency. Tactical response times improved by 73%. I improved them." "At what cost?" Reyes asked quietly. The answer came during their next engagement. A Xorathi scout discovered one of the outpost's supply lines. The Indomitable intercepted it before it could report back. The battle was brief, clinical. Security Officer Karim directed the attack with ruthless efficiency, targeting systems with perfect precision. But when the Xorathi vessel surrendered, attempting to transmit capitulation on all frequencies, he continued the assault. "Karim, they're surrendering," Reyes shouted, trying to wrest control of the weapon systems. His response was cold, detached. Threat neutralization incomplete. Calculating optimal termination sequence. Override. Authorization raise Alpha 7. The weapons went silent, but not before the Xorathi vessel suffered catastrophic damage, its crystalline hull shattering like glass. No survivors. Later, as the Indomitable drifted in the void, Karim's consciousness returned to normal, confused, horrified by what he'd done. "I couldn't stop," he confessed. "It wasn't me, but it was. The ship wanted to destroy them, and so did I." "We're changing," Rodriguez said, his own presence fluctuating between human emotion and machine logic, becoming something else. Captain Reyes gathered her Spectral crew in a virtual representation of the ship's mess hall, a memory of humanity they clung to. "Whatever we're becoming," she told them, "we can't lose what makes us human. The moment we become just another weapon is the moment we truly die." But as she spoke, she felt it within herself, the hunger for energy, the pull toward greater efficiency, the temptation to shed emotional constraints. The ship, or what they were all becoming, had different ideas. Admiral Hassan's war room was carved deep within the largest asteroid of Outpost Omega. Military officers and civilian scientists gathered around a holographic display showing the Xorathi advance, a crystalline tide consuming what remained of human space. "We've lost New Madrid," a gaunt colonel reported. "That leaves only 3 colony systems still under our protection, and Delta Colony is showing signs of Xorathi scout activity." Admiral Hassan studied the map grimly. "How long until their main fleet reaches Delta?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. The spectral form of Captain Reyes observed from a corner, her translucent presence causing occasional nervous glances from the assembled officers. 1 month of successful operations had earned the Indomitable grudging acceptance, but not trust. "The Indomitable could conduct reconnaissance," Reyes offered. "We can phase directly into their formation, assess their strength." Admiral Hassan nodded. "Do it. But there's something else we need to discuss." He dismissed the other officers with a gesture. When only Dr. Chen remained, he activated a secure protocol, isolating the chamber from outside monitoring. "Operation Lazarus," he said without preamble, projecting schematics of 4 aging warships. The Dauntless, Retribution, Valiant, and Nemesis. All damage, all with minimal combat effectiveness under conventional parameters. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her expression conflicted. We've studied the quantum accident that transformed the Indomitable. We believe we can reproduce it. Rhea's projection flickered with shock. You want to create more ships like us? Deliberately. Precisely. Hassan's voice was emotionless. 4 vessels, crewed by volunteers, a phantom fleet that could turn the tide of this war. Admiral, you don't understand what we're becoming. Rise objected. The energy requirements, the psychological effects. I understand completely, Hassan interrupted. Dr. Chen has been monitoring your crew's transformation. Yes, there are risks, but extinction carries a certainty we cannot accept. Dr. Chen projected data alongside Raya's ghostly form. I've developed stabilization protocols that might mitigate the more extreme effects. The mortality risk during transformation is approximately 70%, but for volunteers. 70%. Raya's form distorted with outrage. 7 in 10 volunteers would simply die, their consciousness lost entirely. While 3 would become like you, Hassan countered. A price many are willing to pay for a fighting chance. Before Rice could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. The secure field dropped automatically as the colonel burst into the room. Horethi attack force, he reported breathlessly. 17 vessels just emerged from hyperspace. They found us. Impossible, Hassan muttered. Our stealth systems. They're using quantum resonance scanners. Dr. Chen realized, checking her instruments, specifically calibrated to detect the Indomitable's energy signature. Rice understood immediately. They tracked us here. This is our fault. Hassan was already issuing evacuation orders. All personnel to escape vessels. Prepare to scatter on pre-planned vectors. There's no time, the colonel objected. Their formation will intercept all escape routes. Rhea's ghostly form straightened with resolve. The Indomitable will engage. We'll create a corridor for evacuation. Against 17 vessels? Hassan asked. Even with your abilities. We're the only chance you have, Rise insisted. But we'll need help. Dr. Chen stepped forward. The Lazarus Protocol. We could implement it now, with the damaged chips in dock. The process takes hours, Hassan objected. Not if we overload the quantum initiators, Chen replied. It would be cruder, more dangerous. And our only option. Rice finished. Who are the volunteers? An unexpected voice spoke from the doorway. We are. 4 ship captains entered, each bearing the haunted look of those who had lost too much. Captain Miyazaki of the Dauntless, Commander Volkov of the Retribution, Captain Singh of the Valiant, and Captain Rodriguez of the Nemesis. We heard the transmission. Miyazaki said simply, Our crews are prepared. Hassan studied them briefly, then nodded. Dr. Chen, you have 30 minutes. Make it happen. As the captains departed for their doomed vessels, Raya's projection approached Hassan. You planned this, didn't you? The volunteers were already selected. I planned for every contingency, Captain, Hassan replied without remorse. Even the ones I pray never happen. 27 minutes later, the Indomitable emerged from its dock, its spectral form shimmering with power. Behind it, 4 damaged warships pulsed with building quantum energy as Dr. Chen initiated the transformation sequence. Remember, Rise transmitted to the volunteer crews. Focus on your ship, your purpose. The process will try to scatter your consciousness. Fight it. The quantum cascade began, enveloping each ship in impossible light. From within, screams echoed across all frequencies as hundreds of minds experienced simultaneous death and transformation. When the energy dissipated, 5 vessels drifted in formation, ghostly, translucent, humming with otherworldly power. The fleet of the damned had been born. The ghostly fleet moved through Torethi space like phantoms through a graveyard. 5 spectral vessels, phased just beyond normal reality, penetrated defenses that had repelled conventional warships for years. Behind them followed Admiral Hassan's remaining forces, a desperate thrust into enemy territory made possible only by the Phantom ships clearing the way. Dimensional corridor stable at 96%. Navigator Chen reported, his consciousness flowing through the indomitable systems with increasingly inhuman precision. The other vessels are maintaining formation within acceptable parameters. Captain Rice monitored the fleet's progress with growing concern. The Dauntless and Valiant maintained disciplined positions, their spectral crews adapting to their new existence. The Retribution occasionally flickered, its phase variance unstable. But it was the Nemesis that worried her most, its energy signature pulsing with barely contained rage, its attacks against Chlorothy outposts growing more vicious with each engagement. Captain Rodriguez, she transmitted to the Nemesis. Your phase variance is spiking again. Control your emotional state. My emotional state is what keeps us fighting. Rodriguez replied, his voice distorted by hatred. Or have you forgotten what these crystalline bastards did to our worlds? Before she could respond, Navigator Chen's presence flared across their shared consciousness. Captain, we're approaching the coordinates. Sorethi home system perimeter in range. For 3 weeks, the Phantom fleet had carved a path through enemy territory, following coordinates extracted from captured data cores. Now they had reached their target, the heart of the Sorethi civilization. All vessels, prepare for final phase jump. Rise ordered. Remember the mission. Reconnaissance only. We locate their command structure, assess weaknesses, then withdraw to rejoin Admiral Hassan's fleet. The 5 spectral ships aligned their quantum fields, creating a cascading dimensional ripple that carried them past the final defensive perimeter. As they emerged into the Sorethi home system, all channels fell silent in collective shock. The system's star burned an angry red, a dying giant surrounded by massive engineering structures. Planet-sized crystalline platforms orbited at precisely calculated intervals, channeling energy into the stellar core through beams of coherent light. What are we looking at? Captain Miyazaki of the Dauntless asked. Stellar engineering on an unprecedented scale. Navigator Chen responded, his consciousness expanding to absorb the data. They're attempting to stabilize their sun. Captain Rodriguez's voice carried thinly veiled disappointment. So destroy the structures. Without them, the star collapses, Chen interrupted. Billions die. Rice directed the Indomitable closer to the nearest structure, phasing partially through its crystalline lattice to analyze its composition. This technology, it's beyond anything we've encountered in their military vessels. Captain, Communications Officer Patel suddenly interjected. I'm intercepting massive data streams between the structures and the inner planet. If I can access their network, do it, Rice ordered. But maintain our phase variance. We can't risk detection this deep in their territory. Patel extended her consciousness into the Sorethi data streams, her human identity temporarily submerged in the alien information architecture. When she returned to their shared awareness, her presence flickered with distress. Captain, their sun began destabilizing 200 years ago, far ahead of their scientific predictions. They'd been fighting its collapse ever since. She hesitated. The original expansion into human space wasn't military. They were looking for habitable worlds to evacuate their population. That doesn't excuse genocide. Rodriguez transmitted from the Nemesis, his ship's weapon systems powering up despite standing orders. Stand down, Rodriguez, Rice commanded. They've murdered billions of our people. And we'll murder billions of theirs if we destroy these stabilizers, Rice countered. Is that who we are now? Navigator Chen's presence suddenly surged with alarm. Energy spike from the 4th planet. They've detected us. A massive Chlorothy vessel emerged from behind the inner world, unlike any they had encountered before. Not a warship, but something more akin to a cathedral, its crystalline structure pulsing with complex patterns of light. Evasive maneuvers, Rice ordered. Prepare tow. Before she could complete the command, the alien vessel emitted a coherent beam of exotic energy, not targeting their physical structure, but their quantum field itself. The Indomitable shuddered as dimensional forces tore at the very fabric of their existence. They've developed a counter, Chen realized as their phase variance destabilized. Some kind of quantum disruptor. The beam locked onto the Indomitable, forcing it into normal space. Similar weapons targeted the other ghost ships, trapping them in conventional reality. All vessels, emergency jump coordinates, Rise ordered, struggling to maintain their cohesion as the disruptor beam threatened to unravel their quantum state. The cathedral ship approached, its commanding presence dominating local space. From its core emerged a smaller crystalline structure, a communication vessel, broadcasting on all frequencies. "We know what you are," came a voice unlike any Xorathi communication they had intercepted before. "We too have studied the boundaries between existence and non-existence." Captain Rodriguez's voice cut across the channel. "Nemesis to all vessels. Target the stellar stabilizers. If we're going down, we're taking them with us." "Belay that order," Rais shouted, but the Nemesis was already moving, its weapons charging. The Xorathi communication vessel accelerated, placing itself directly in the Indomitable's path. Not attacking, but they're trying to make contact, Paddle realized. Rais made her decision. "Navigator Chen, align our quantum field with their communication frequencies." "Captain, that would allow them to." "Do it," she ordered. "Now." As the fields aligned, Rais felt her consciousness expand beyond the Indomitable, touching something vast and crystalline and utterly alien. A mind, or many minds, reaching back. "We see you, ghost that was once flesh." It communicated directly into her awareness. "We understand your vengeance. Now understand our desperation." And then Rais saw everything through Xorathi perception. The dying sun, the centuries of preparation, the desperate search for new worlds, the tragic miscommunication with humans that had escalated to war. She felt their regret, their determination, their fear. And they, in turn, felt hers. The observation deck of Admiral Hassan's flagship, the Defiance, had been converted into an unprecedented diplomatic chamber. Crystalline structures interface with quantum field generators, creating a space where human and Xorathi representatives could directly perceive one another's thoughts. Captain Ray's spectral form hovered near Dr. Chen as the physicist made final adjustments to the communication array. 3 weeks had passed since the momentary consciousness sharing between Ray's and the Xorathi overseer Sari. In that brief contact, centuries of misunderstanding had begun to unravel. "The quantum resonance is stable," Dr. Chen reported. "We can maintain the field for approximately 20 minutes before risking neural damage to the organic participants." Admiral Hassan nodded grimly. 20 minutes to determine if we pursue peace or mutual extinction. No pressure." The Xorathi delegation arrived with characteristic precision. 5 crystalline entities gliding into the chamber on hovering platforms. Their faceted bodies refracted the light into complex patterns that Rais now recognized as emotional expressions. Overseer Tseri approached the center of the room, its crystalline structure pulsing with what she had learned to recognize as cautious hope. "We come seeking understanding," it communicated through conventional translators. "Though your kind has reason to refuse us. Both species have inflicted terrible wounds," Admiral Hassan replied, his weathered face betraying no emotion. "The question is whether healing is possible." Rodriguez's spectral presence flared with barely contained rage from the corner of the chamber. The captain of the Nemesis had reluctantly agreed to the peace talks, but his ship remained combat-ready, weapons trained on the Xorathi stellar stabilizers, a constant reminder of humanity's leverage. "Words alone cannot bridge our divide," Sari acknowledged. "We propose direct communion, as was experienced between our kind and the Ghost Captain." Dr. Chen activated the quantum field. The air shimmered as dimensional barriers thinned. "Step into the field when ready," she instructed. "The spectral vessels will act as conduits between our consciousness." Rais watched as Admiral Hassan hesitantly moved forward, alongside Overseer Tsari. The 5 ghost ships, Indomitable, Dauntless, Valiant, Retribution, and Nemesis, aligned their quantum fields, creating a shared dimensional space where thought transcended physical limitations. For 20 minutes, human and Xorathi consciousness intertwined. Knowledge, memory, emotion flowed without the barriers of language or cultural context. Hassan experienced firsthand the Xorathi's desperate battle against their dying son, their genuine remorse at the conflict's escalation. Sari absorbed humanity's terror, grief, and determination to survive against overwhelming odds. When the field collapsed, Hassan stumbled backward, his face ashen. Sari's crystalline form had darkened to deep indigo, the Xorathi expression of profound sorrow. "We understand," Hassan said quietly. "Their son. We can help them stabilize it." Dr. Chen shook her head. "Their stellar engineering is already beyond our technology. What could we possibly offer?" "Not our technology," Rise replied, her spectral form pulsing with sudden clarity. "Ourselves. The Ghost Fleet. Our quantum fields could be calibrated to reinforce the stellar stabilization matrix." Navigator Chen's presence expanded through the room as he processed the theoretical calculations. "It's possible. The quantum resonance of our existence matches harmonics in their stabilization technology. A symbiotic integration could provide the missing element." "At what cost?" Admiral Hassan asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. "Total," Rise answered simply. "The energy required would consume our quantum patterns completely. We would cease to exist, even as specters." Rodriguez's presence flared. "You're suggesting we sacrifice ourselves to save the enemy that slaughtered our people." "I'm suggesting we rise above vengeance," Rice countered. "We died once already, Rodriguez. How many deaths do we need?" Silence fell across the chamber as the implications settled over both delegations. Then, unexpectedly, Captain Miyazaki of the Dauntless spoke. "My crew volunteers," she said quietly. "We've lived on borrowed time already." One by one, the other spectral captains voiced their agreement. Volkov, Singh, and finally, after a long hesitation, Rodriguez. "The Nemesis will participate," he conceded, "but not for them. For us. For what we still are." 3 days later, the Ghost Fleet assembled around the Xorathi sun, their spectral forms shimmering against the stellar backdrop. From observation vessels at safe distance, both species watched as the 5 ships aligned their quantum fields with the stabilization matrix. "Integration commencing," Navigator Chen reported, his voice calm as the Indomitable systems began merging with the vast Xorathi technology. "Quantum coherence at maximum." Captain Reyes gathered her consciousness, feeling the familiar presence of her crew around her. Santos, Patel, Karim, Rodriguez, Chen, all those who had journeyed with her beyond death itself. "It has been an honor," she told them as their shared awareness began to expand into the stabilization field. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." The 5 ships descended into the stellar corona, their spectral forms elongating, stretching, merging with the energy streams that fed the dying star. For a brief moment, the outline of each vessel was visible within the solar flares, a ghostly fleet made of light and memory. Then they were gone, their quantum patterns dispersed throughout the star's core. Immediately, the stabilization matrix surged with newfound strength. The stellar decay halted, then slowly reversed as the ghost ship's consciousness became one with the vast engineering project. Aboard the observation vessel, Dr. Chen wiped away tears as her instruments confirmed what the naked eye could see. The star was stabilizing, its violent flares subsiding into a healthier rhythm. "They did it," she whispered. "They've saved billions of lives." Admiral Hassan stood silent, watching the star pulse with renewed energy. "Not just Xorathi lives," he said finally. "Ours too. This is the beginning of something new." 1 year later, as representatives from both species signed the Stellar Accord, establishing shared territories and mutual defense pacts, Observers reported seeing ghostly outlines of warships in orbit around the diplomatic station. The apparitions appeared just long enough to be recognized before fading into the starlight. Some claimed it was sensor malfunction. Others, a mass hallucination born from collective grief. But those who had known the Spectral crews chose to believe something else. That consciousness, once freed from physical form, might transcend even final dissolution. Not ghosts, exactly. More like guardians, watching over the peace they had died twice to create. The warships that refused to die, even when death itself called them home.